my fellow Americans.
Whatever our hopes may be for the future, for reducing this threat or living with it, there is no escaping either the gravity or the totality of its challenge to our survival and to our security. A challenge that confronts us in unaccustomed ways in every sphere of human activity. This deadly challenge imposes upon our society two requirements of direct concern, both to the press and to the President. Two requirements that may seem almost contradictory in tone, but which must be reconciled and fulfilled if we are to meet this national peril. I refer first to the need for far greater public information, and second, to the need for far greater official secrecy. The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret societies, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. We decided long ago that the dangers of excessive and unwarranted concealment of pertinent facts far outweighed the dangers which are cited to justify it. Even today, there is little value in opposing the threat of a closed society by imitating its arbitrary restrictions. Even today, there is little value in ensuring the survival of our nation if our traditions do not survive with it. And there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment. That I do not intend to permit to the extent that it's in my control. And no official of my administration, whether his rank is high or low, civilian or military, should interpret my words here tonight as an excuse to censor the news, to stifle dissent, to cover up our mistakes, or to withhold from the press and the public the facts they deserve to know.
A functioning democracy? Well, let's have a look at it. It costs $2 billion to become president. They're 25% of the total prisoners in the world. They spend over $800 billion a year on arms, which is more than most of the world put together. They've been at war for 250 years since their state was formed 275 years ago. But they can't afford universal health care. They can't afford the 1.7 trillion debt forgiveness for students. They can't afford a programme for the 17 million children that go to bed hungry. Is this a functioning democracy? What's your idea of a democracy?
know this this is a bit of an aside, but in terms of how you think about problem sets, when I was a cadet, what's the cadet motto at West Point? You will not lie, cheat, or steal, or tolerate those who do. I was the CI director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses.
It would have been more appropriate for Mr. Trudeau, Prime Minister of Canada, to address this House according to Article 144, an article which was specifically designed to debate violations of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law, which is clearly the case with Mr. Trudeau. Then again, a Prime Minister who openly admires the Chinese basic dictatorship, who tramples on fundamental rights by persecuting and criminalizing his own citizens as terrorists just because they dared to stand up to his perverted concept of democracy, should not be allowed to speak in this House at all. Mr. Trudeau, you are a disgrace for any democracy. Please spare us your presence. Thank you.
become involved when disinformation poses a threat to the security of our country. It is when there's a connectivity to a threat to our country. It could be a threat, a connectivity to violence. And what this working group does, is precisely what I would think you would want it to do, which is to take a look at the work, the disinformation work that our department has done and ask the following questions. Do we have policies? Do we have guardrails? Do we have standards?
But here's the problem. We can't even agree. We can't even agree what disinformation is. You can't even agree that it was disinformation, that the Russians fed information to the Steele dossier. If you can't agree to that, how are we ever going to come to an agreement on what is disinformation so you can police it on social media?
Senator, I have 2 points, if I may finish. Number one, that what this working group does, because it's not an office, what this working group does is ensure that there are guardrails, definitions, standards to make sure that the free speech rights, the civil rights, civil liberties, and privacy rights of individuals
So
are
do
not
you think COVID disinformation threatens our national security?
And number two, if I may, Senator, and number two, is it your proposition that when the cartels spread disinformation with respect to our immigration policies to try to lure vulnerable migrants to our border illegally?
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you to guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Rationality belongs to the cool observers, but because of the stupidity of the average man, he follows not reason but faith, and the naive faith of the proletarian requires necessary illusion and emotionally potent oversimplifications, which have to be provided by myth-makers to keep the ordinary person on the right course.
radical, colleagues, but the answer to war is not more war, it's peace. And peace isn't delivered by the barrel of a gun, it's delivered by diplomacy, by dialogue. You can wish away your continent's history, but we share a continent with Russia. We will sit down with Russia. There will be a negotiated peace, and this organisation should be promoting it earlier rather than delaying it and making sure that more Ukrainians die. Your feigning of sympathy rings hollow. It makes me sick, to be honest with you.
We had a good discussion on ensuring global energy security and adequate oil supplies to support global economic growth. And that will begin shortly. I'm doing all I can to increase the supply for the United States of America, which I expect to happen. The Saudis share that urgency, and based on our discussions today, I expect we'll see further steps in the coming weeks.
Are you worried about
Well, one of the four principal functions of the CIA is to gather intelligence and ideally forward it to the president, the users of information, the policymakers, as they say. There are other functions, however, some of them more legitimate than others. One is to run secret wars, the covert action that's written and talked about so much, like what's happening in Nicaragua today from Honduras. Another thing is to disseminate propaganda to influence people's minds, and this is a major function of the CIA. And unfortunately, of course, it overlaps into the gathering of information. You have contact with a journalist, you will give him true stories, you'll get information from him, you'll also give him false stories. For example, in my war, the Angola war that I helped to manage, 1/3 of my staff was propaganda. Ironically, it's called covert action inside the CIA. Outside, that means the violent part. I had propagandists all over the world, principally in London, Kinshasa, and Zambia. We would take stories which we would write and put them in the Zambia Times, and then pull them out and send them to a journalist on our payroll in Europe. But his cover story, you see, would be that he'd gotten them from his stringer in Lusaka, who had gotten them from the Zambia Times. We had the complicity of the government of Zambia, Kenneth Kaunda, if you will, to put these false stories into his newspapers. But after that point, the journalists, Reuters and AFP, the management was not witting of it. Now, our contact man in Europe was, and we pumped just dozens of stories about Cuban atrocities, Cuban rapists. In one case, we had the Cuban rapists caught and tried by the Ovimbundu maidens who had been their victims, and then we ran photographs that made almost every newspaper in the country of the Cubans being executed by the Ovimbundu women who supposedly had been their victims.
These were fake photos?
Oh, absolutely. We didn't know of one single atrocity committed by the Cubans. It was pure, raw, false propaganda to create an illusion of communists, eating babies for breakfast and that sort of totally false propaganda.
I can no longer remain in today's Democratic Party that's under the complete control of an elitist cabal of warmongers who are driven by cowardly wokeness, who divide us by racializing every issue and stoking anti-white racism, who actively work to undermine our God-given freedoms that are enshrined in our Constitution, who are hostile to people of faith and spirituality, who demonize the police but protect criminals at the expense of law-abiding Americans, who believe in open borders, who weaponize the national security state to go after their political opponents, and above all, who are dragging us ever closer to nuclear war. Now, I believe in a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people. Unfortunately, today's Democratic Party does not. Instead, it stands for a government that is of, by, and for the powerful elite. Now, I'm calling on my fellow common sense, independent-minded Democrats to join me in leaving the Democratic Party. If you can no longer stomach the direction that the so-called woke Democratic Party ideologues are taking our country, then I invite you to join me.
Welcome everybody to the first day of December. We're in a festive mood. We've got the whole set built out on this first of December. And by the way, December is the best month of the year. It's you got the holiday season. You get together with family. It's my birthday. So what could be better than that? Great food.
Yeah.
See?
Oh yeah, that's right. One of you is on Pearl Harbor Day. Which one of?
Yeah. It's a day that will live in infamy. Mine's December 31st. But hey, we are not here to talk about birthdays. We're here to talk about news. Good to see all of you. Natalie's back. She was out yesterday with a double ear infection. I guess you technically still have a double ear infection.
Well, I don't know. I'm being treated for it. I'm much on the ups. I'm on the way back. But you still get the smelly cat voice. And I apologize for that. But I was participating in the show yesterday, but I was a zombie behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, it's good to have you back. And so we have a pretty big announcement tonight. I'm pretty excited about this. So we're working a lot more closely with Rumble now going forward. And I'm very, very excited about this because they are a free speech, no censorship platform. So we can say whatever we want over there and not be worried about having a Dr. John Campbell style community strike, which is what happened to a doctor earlier this week on YouTube. So what we are going to do on this show is we will start the show here on YouTube and Rumble simultaneously. Hello to all of our friends over on Rumble. Hello to all of you in the chat here on YouTube. Nice to see all of you. We are live. And then about halfway through the show, when we get to some stories that we absolutely cannot broadcast here on YouTube because they would flag us, take us off the air, they don't like these types of stories, then we are going to end the stream here on YouTube, say goodbye to YouTube, and we will then be exclusive on Rumble for those remaining stories. So with that being said, let's just put up the rundown and show you what we're talking about here on tonight's broadcast. So first tonight, we're going to be talking about this massive new war budget that Congress is currently arguing about, fighting about. So they're going to be trying to push this through, and we'll tell you what's in that. We're also going to talk about Elon Musk and pushing for Twitter, telling us about election interference, right? And what else is coming up?
Yes, and then we are going to give you an update on the invasion of Haiti, a story we've been bringing you bit by bit as it unfolds.
That's right. We're also then, and Dan Cohen is going to be joining us here on the show, and we're going to be talking about the Great Barrier Reef scam. We were told that it was going to be destroyed, right? It was by now it should have been gone. Like the Great Barrier Reef should have been absolutely gone. So we'll give you an update on the Great Barrier Reef. I think we're going to check in to see if it's still there or not. Turns out there's some good news.
Now, the stories that you see here on the rundown that we are just not willing to take a chance on YouTube's platform are about the gender bill, the gender reform bill in Scotland that is currently working its way through Parliament. It was proposed by Prime Minister Nicola Sturgeon. She was yelled down about it by people who do, in fact, want to protect women's spaces. We're going to give you all of that data. And that is just something, again, that, anyone who questions certain narratives gets accused of wrongthink. We don't feel like we are pushing any great narrative, but we don't want to risk being penalized for these types of things.
And an unbelievable angle in what's going on with this Great Reset and proof that it's happening right before our eyes. We're going to talk about the blood banks. That's all I'm going to say about it. We're going to talk about it on Rumble and what is happening as it relates to vaccines. So we'll talk about that on Rumble a little bit later in the show. It's an unbelievable story, and it's being censored just about everywhere. So are you ready to get uncomfortable on this December 1st? Redacted starts right now. Good to see all of you on this Thursday night. Good to see you. Welcome into the cozy confines of the Redacted studio. Welcome to the rebellion. I hope good to see all of our rebels who are joining us. Nice to see everyone. We are live on Rumble, Joe. We are live right now on Rumble, I think. Are we not? We are, right?
Let's see.
Yeah, we should be.
I have hair on my face.
It said live stream begins, but it doesn't show. Look, it says we're not live on Rumble. Are we live on Rumble?
Yes, it is.
It is live?
Yes, we are live on Rumble. I'm looking at it right now.
Okay, we are live. Just want to make sure. I've got my Rumble board in front of me here, so I get to see all of our comments on Rumble. Yes, we are live on Rumble. We're live here on YouTube simultaneously. So important, please sign up for a Rumble account. It's free. And the only reason you need to put in your personal information is if you would want to then pay for like a Rumble rant, which is like a super chat. You do not need to enter credit. I saw someone write saying, I don't want to put in my personal information or credit card info. No, that's only just like YouTube. Like if you wanted to actually do a super chat or something like that, that's when you would do that. So not necessary. You can sign up for a free Rumble account. We are rumble.com/redacted. So again, halfway through the show tonight, we are going to be saying goodbye to YouTube, which censors content all the time, and going exclusive on Rumble for some very important stories. We do have a daily newsletter. I would encourage all of you to sign up for it. It's totally free. If you go to redacted.inc, not .com, it's .inc, put in your email address, and then you will receive a welcome email from us. You have to double opt in to make sure that you really want the email. So verify the email once you receive it. It might go to your spam. It might go somewhere else. And then you'll receive the newsletter tomorrow morning when we publish it. We publish it 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. We cover a bunch of big stories. We hope you smile a little bit. We try to make you laugh a little bit. We get you caught up on stuff you might have missed overnight. And it's free. And it's an extension of what we do here on the show. So please go sign up. All right. Anything you want to say? Anything on your mind?
I'm saving my voice.
Okay.
It's not, you can tell it's not strong. I am being treated for an ear infection. And so, my whole, my otolaryngology vibe is weak right now. But I'm here with you. And I will ring in when I
I think this is, I knew I was forgetting something. Okay.
This is not focused.
There we go. Now we're better.
Oh, okay.
Now we're better. Everyone wants to see you focused. They want to see me out of focus.
This is as focused as it gets this week.
Right. All right. Well, I hope everyone's doing well. Okay, let's dive into it. Let's talk about this story. So this is crazy. So we are about to hit a $1 trillion defense budget. Now, you might say, well, no, we're nearing $900 billion. No. We're a hop skip from that. And you may even argue, as we've done on this show before, that the number that we have where it's about 800 billion is already about 100 and so billion beyond that anyway.
Yes.
So,
well, you've done pieces here on the show where you have picked apart sort of the daily military contracts that are handed out in pursuit of things that are connected to our existing military budget. So
right.
The United States government, hands them out like Skittles. these government contracts for military missions.
They just add on.
Those don't necessarily get, put into the streamlined budget.
So Americans are facing right now, let's just run down the list as Santa goes by in the background. Americans are facing a huge spike in layoffs right now. Fuel shortages. So we just got the numbers today on job losses, and it's bad. And we've been predicting this for a while, but now we saw the numbers today, and it's a huge spike, in the biggest spike in 10 months of job losses across the United States, at a time when you're getting all these seasonal employment. You're getting all these seasonal workers that are coming in. Fuel shortages. People who are, freezing in their homes right now because they can't turn up the thermostat because they can't afford to do it. As we've said on the show before, more people die of cold than do heat waves, right? Overwhelmingly. And skyrocketing energy costs all around. Is Congress doing anything to stop it? No, they're not. Nope. Instead, they are about to approve a massive increase to our war budget, pushing us closer and closer to $1 trillion. And if you need any more examples just of how corrupt these guys are, take a look at this. This is from Politico. This is their headline. House Senate negotiators agree to add $45 billion to Biden's defense budget. So just let's unpack that a second, okay? The House and Senate have agreed to increase the 2023 Defense Authorization Act by another $45 billion beyond what the Biden administration just requested.
Why not?
Like, we're going to just sweeten the deal for you. We're just going to throw in an additional $45 billion on top of this.
This happened last year. I think it was in the 30s.
Yeah, it was.
But
they do it all the time now.
Why not a little more? You under-asked. I love when that happens. Bank error in your favor.
It's unbelievable. I mean, the $45 billion increase was agreed on by the House and Senate Armed Services Committee, but other details of the NDAA are still being finalized. The increase would have the two panels agree on, would bring the total budget to $847 billion. $847 billion. Just wrap your head around that. More than all of the major militaries of the world. I mean, Russia's annual military budget is in like the 70s or 80s. Mm-hmm. Think about China's military budget,
which is larger than ours by personnel.
Yeah. So they have more personnel in their military than we do. And yet we pay about 6 or 7 times the amount of China. And all of the industrialized world.
Not to people, though. Not to soldiers.
Oh, no, we don't pay it to soldiers.
We invest in it, but this doesn't necessarily go into soldiers. So this budget usually does, since we haven't seen the final line items yet, but these budgets usually do include pay raises for the military. So we'll have to keep an eye on that, because as inflation just sort of rolls out of control. And a lot of times when the military move overseas, they have spouses who can't work in those places. So it's a tough deal for them.
So, and we're going to hear more about the soldier angle in all of this, about how this relates to the vaccine mandates, because you're getting some Republicans that are now saying, wait a second, this is an opportunity for us to end vaccine mandates for the military. And we're going to tie this in, so we won't pass this budget, this military budget, unless we can end the vaccine mandates for our military men and women, which should have been done a long time ago. So we'll hear about that in a second. But first, take a look at this, Philip. I don't know if you have my laptop here. Yeah. So this was the Deal Book Summit. This is New York Times. So the New York Times yesterday, about a month ago, we heard that they were going to have a panel, this Deal Book Summit, hosted by Andrew Ross Sorkin. He was there. Vladimir Zelensky was going to be in attendance. Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX fame, Janet Yellen. I mean, it's like a who's who of criminals, basically, like on stage at this Deal Book Summit. Hey, who can we get at the New York Times to bring in, right? So Zelensky, we'll get him to bring in. And so the New York Times does this interview with him yesterday about, and he asks him specifically about the budget, the United States military budget. And, we've spent over $105 billion in Ukraine. How do you justify that amount of money? Don't you think, is that a little too much? How do you justify that? Watch Andrew Ross Sorkin and Volodymyr Zelensky on that question.
15th, the Biden administration submitted a new aid request of $37.7 billion, which, if passed, would bring the total amount that the U.S. Has provided in assistance to $105.5 billion. We're going to be speaking with former Vice President Mike Pence a little bit later, and there has been a sentiment among Republicans who now control the House in the United States from Kevin McCarthy, who said there should not be a blank check. What do you tell them?
We are absolutely open, and we are thankful for the assistance. It's not quite correct to speak about 100 billion as a value of the war for the United States. The value is lives of people. If Ukraine does not stand through this war, the war will spread into other territories and maybe even to other continents. Our people is the biggest value. Tell me how much our people cost. I don't know.
Okay. How much our people cost? What is that? I'm sorry, explain. How much do our people cost? How much do the people in the West cost? How much do the people in the EU cost? How much do the people in the United States cost? You spend $847 billion and then another $100 billion to kill all of those people in Ukraine. Never mind the fact these people are being killed. This isn't like we're helping them in any appreciable way. They are being decimated.
Yes. I mean, if this was a budgetary number saying this is the price of peace, then we could all say, okay, spend it. We'll make it up later.
Yeah,
this is not the price of peace. This is the price to continue killing.
Right. So we're using their...
They have an opportunity to sit at a peace table today, yesterday, and tomorrow. That opportunity stands to say, no more killing. This stops now. They won't take it. And so, it's interesting that this figure comes out at the same time this week that Politico published a story about EU officials accusing the United States of profiteering from war. And so then when you look at this budget of $847 billion, you can sort of start to see how government officials feel like that is an investment. Because there's money to be made there. It's not a sunk cost. It's not like we do it because we value freedom and protection and that kind of thing. Right. They see it as an investment, not only to boost the United States PR around the world, but also absolutely for profiteering.
So, you think about...
What did they... So did they happen to mention what because you said we have almost $1 trillion war budget. What was our peace budget? I don't remember if you said that or not.
And I refuse. Here's the thing. I refuse to call it our defense budget. They call it a defense budget. It's not a defense budget.
Well, did you know that the Department of Defense was originally called in Washington days, the Department of War?
Yeah.
It's just
it's just a name.
It was just a name change.
Of course.
It remains the Department of War.
Right. Yeah. So they changed it.
Because no one's
what about
coming
Department
here.
Of Peace? Do you know someone brought up the idea of a Department of Peace? I don't remember which member who was running for president, and they were laughed at. They were laughed at and mocked for saying we should have a Department of Peace instead of a Department of Defense.
Yeah.
And they were mocked openly. Unbelievable. So, Americans are suffering right now. They can't pay their heating bills, the same across Europe, but we're going to send money to Ukraine to make sure that they have heat and that their infrastructure, by the way, we still have never passed an infrastructure bill in the United States. Whatever happened to Build Back Better? Instead, we passed an Inflation Reduction Act, which was just a big wet kiss for, renewables companies. So did we do anything on infrastructure? Did we help anybody? No, we didn't. But we are, listen to Anthony Blinken, sending millions now to Ukraine to help them with their heating and electrical infrastructure. Watch.
I announced that the United States will commit over $53 million to send equipment to help stabilize Ukraine's energy grid and keep Ukraine's power and electricity running. We've also submitted a request to Congress for $1.1 billion to secure Ukraine and Moldova's energy sector and restore their energy supply.
Right. Yeah. Right. So we're going to take care of them. So one big piece of all of this is the military and their vaccine mandates. So this is an interesting sort of wrench in the works right now from Republicans. Well, Ted Cruz, who likes to be an opportunist whenever he can. So he now really cares. Suddenly, they really, really care about the vaccine mandates for our men and women in the armed forces, who, by the way, we've done multiple stories here on the show about all sorts of problems that these individuals have had as a result of it. I mean, and we have an interview that's going to be coming out on our Locals exclusive and on Rumble with John Bowes, who's an Air Force pilot, who is part of this lawsuit about vaccine mandates for the men and women in the military. So here is Ted Cruz now standing up. We're going to use this piece to stop the war budget if we don't get rid of these mandates. Listen.
Our obligation is to defend the fighting men and women of the military. And so I'm standing with my colleagues. I believe we will have 41 Republicans who say, we will not vote to take up the NDAA unless this body votes on protecting the servicemen and women. In May of this year, I introduced legislation, the Americans Act, that would prohibit the Biden administration from terminating or taking adverse action against any serviceman or woman because of his or her decision not to take the vaccine. It would also provide an avenue for people who have been dismissed to be reinstated if they choose to be reinstated in the military.
The Americans Act, he calls it. That's original. I was shocked that one's not already taken.
The Americans Act.
What do you mean, for the show?
I'm looking for names, and the helping our men and women in armed helping our men and women in the military act. Well, that's available? Wow, I can't believe no one ever came up with that before. So John Mearsheimer, we featured John Mearsheimer here on the show. He's been really an outspoken critic of this war. He's been a real thoughtful academic on this question about war and our U.S. involvement in this war. He did an interview on Unheard. I'm not going to play any of it right now, but he did talk about how with John Mearsheimer basically was asked about the realistic options for a potential diplomatic settlement to the Ukraine war. And he said there are no options. He said we're screwed, that the West is playing Russian roulette basically, and that we are screwed as a result of this fool's errand inside of Ukraine right now. And sending all of this money there. They just continue to see as an opportunity to make as much money as they can, the military-industrial complex, and there is no turning off of the spigot. I'm just curious about this sort of Ted Cruz Republican game with vaccine mandates for the military, though, because in the end they're going to fold on this point.
You think Congress will fold?
I think, they're pushing for more money than Biden asked for. And so they are going to try to use this as some sort of a cudgel against who? I don't know. The military-industrial complex is going to be upset about this if they don't see this budget coming through. They're going to say this is going to hinder our war effort. And I think most Americans would say, great. I think how many people watching right now would be absolutely happy about the idea of them not spending this money, not being able to funnel billions of dollars to all of these war contractors, and they would be screwed. I would be perfectly fine with that. I would be absolutely fine with that. If the
war contractors would be screwed.
Yeah, exactly. Because that's what they're saying.
Oh, like
what
they would go out of business.
Because the argument is, well, you're screwing with our readiness. You're screwing with our readiness and our preparedness. For what? What threat are we facing right? Guys on camels in Afghanistan? No.
I don't know, especially when we're told that we've all but depleted our stores by sending them to Ukraine.
The only threat we create is because we go into other countries and invade those countries.
Right.
That's when we have retaliation. So here's an idea. Don't do that, and then we won't need to spend a friggin' $1 trillion on a war budget. There's an idea for you.
Yeah.
But that's never going to happen.
It just, when you see these numbers, it doesn't go far from your head when you write your taxes and when you write your tax bills and you see your taxes coming out of your paycheck and you're like, there you go.
Yeah. No, this is exactly what they want. All part of the plan. Well, we've got more news to get to here on the show. We're going to talk about Elon Musk and Twitter and the interference in the elections in just a moment. We're also going to look at the New York Times saying that the United States is ready to invade Haiti. Wow, the New York Times is actually covering this story. We've been covering it for months here, and the mainstream media has been ignoring the story. What's going on? Something must have changed. And we've got a lot of other stories. But if you're just joining us, we should mention that we are going to be moving over to Rumble halfway through our show to cover stories that you cannot talk about on YouTube. Otherwise, you will be censored, blocked, banned, given a strike, all of that good stuff. Dr. John Campbell, just the other day, felt the pain of this. He got a strike. Or he got a warning. He got a warning, which
you get one. You get one lifelong warning over content. Now, this guy spends his time.
He's a doctor.
Like by that nice little window with the stuffed dog in the window.
Right.
And he pores over medical studies and medical journals. He has no end game other than to explain to you the science. And he does that. And then something he said was, against, again, this biopharmaceutical complex. And he had his hand slapped. And you can see in the channel when he spoke about it yesterday, he felt very dispirited. It feels awful, especially if you are like, I can see myself next to that nice little window reading my books, trying to figure out what's going on in the world in an earnest way. And then a tech company comes and says, you can't say that.
Yeah.
This is wrongthink. And it feels terrible. So I absolutely empathize with him. And so we are going to protect ourselves a little bit more and go to a what?
No, Chitty says, he's a nurse. Okay. Why? People always say he's a nurse. He's a nurse. Okay. But how do you get to use, okay. All right.
I'm not sure. He also was
but he
like a professor
doctor
for nurses. So he might have a doctorate in education.
Okay.
Is possible. I'm not sure, but yes.
Okay. Nevertheless, yes. So we are going to, halfway through the show, move over to Rumble for some very important stories. And we're going to try that. We're going to try it tonight and see how it goes and hopefully continue to do that.
So come with us. I see a couple of nice chatters putting the URL in the chat. They do seem to have it right. So, click over there, maybe open us up in that window, see how you like it. Give it a try.
Yeah. All right. But first, we are heading for a devastating economic collapse in the next coming months. We're already seeing it in the housing sector. We are seeing it in the massive layoffs. We just got the layoff numbers today. Not good. And we were predicting that really wouldn't get as bad as we thought it would, probably by January, February time. So we're already seeing bad numbers when it comes to layoffs. And this is a manufactured crisis. Jerome Powell raised interest rates recently. Looks like they might be doing it again here in the next few days. The Fed is talking about raising interest rates again. Inflation is at all-time highs. Meanwhile, Elon Musk is telling the Fed, do not touch interest rates. Stop messing with interest rates. Stocks and crypto all over the place. We've seen what's happened to crypto. Just look at Bitcoin, lost 2/3 of its value. And there are troubling signs ahead for the U.S. dollar as it continues to lose value and inflation nonstop of printing of money. So I hope you're protecting your family against what's coming. If you're not, then you need to learn about gold and silver. Did you know that you can add physical gold and silver to your IRA or 401k? Yes, I'm doing it. You should as well. You can do it very easily with our friends at Lear Capital. So all you need to do is call their 800 number. So their 800 number is right there on the screen. Just write it down. I'll say it out loud for you here. It's 1-800-613-3557 if you want to learn more. Call Lear Capital today. Ask them about their Lear Advantage IRA, where you can transfer or roll over an old 401k, and then you're self-directing this account. So then what happens is then you control your money tax-free till retirement. So all of that profit, all of that money that grows tax-free in that account, and you control it. No government does, no bank controls it, you control it. That's the power of a self-directed IRA. And to sweeten the deal, Lear is offering free shipping on every purchase, and they're also giving away up to $15,000 in free bonus silver right now to every qualified client. Lear Capital is the gold standard in precious metals investing, has over $3 billion in trusted transactions, over 650,000 happy customers and prospects in the 25 years in business. So call their 800 number again. It's 1-800-613-3557. And if you don't want to call, you can simply go to their website as well. Click on that link at Redacted.com. Redacted.com. All right. So let's talk about Elon Musk. Well, last night after we went off the air, so like right around the same time as we were going off the air last night, Elon Musk drops a bombshell story admitting that Twitter was actively involved in undermining the 2022 elections in the United States. And this is a staggering story. So here was the original tweet that started it all from Reuters. So there was a Reuters piece that says, Twitter not safer under Elon Musk, says former head of trust and safety, who probably just got, fired. So of course they're out with an axe to grind. And then the tweet below it says, Twitter has shown itself to be not safe for the past 10 years and has lost users' trust. The past team of trust and safety is a disgrace, so it doesn't have any right to judge what is being done now. They had a chance, but they sold their souls to a corporation. And then Elon jumps in response to that. Exactly. The obvious reality, as longtime users know, is that Twitter has failed in trust and safety for a very long time and has interfered in elections. Twitter 2.0 will be far more effective, transparent, and even-handed, he said.
Well, that's interesting. This comes just a few days after he said he is going to release the Twitter files, which are some kind of documents around why Twitter made certain content decisions that have affected, well, all of us, about what we can say, what we can't say,
right.
What we can like. It's interesting that a lot of his big bombshells come in conversations without him. He didn't come out and just say this, like, I've been looking through these Twitter files. I notice interfering in the U.S. election. And I know I bring this up a lot, but I think that it's relevant, the fact that Michael Cohen went to jail and was indicted for interfering with an election by keeping information from that the U.S. public had what a court of law decided that the U.S. public had the right to know about this Stormy Daniels affair with Donald Trump.
Right.
And because he was instrumental in keeping that from us right before an election, that's why he got in trouble. So if Twitter has done anything similar, then this is the same. Then we absolutely will see that the government is choosing winners and losers and saying it's okay if it benefits one party. It's not okay if it benefits another.
Right. Yeah. And so it was only a few days ago he made that announcement on these Twitter files, and we're waiting. We're still waiting with bated breath on this. So here was the post-millennial headline. Breaking, Elon Musk confirms that Twitter interfered with elections. And then I want to kind of go through the deep dive on this. So let's take a look at the deep dive quote on this. What the post-millennial breaks down. It has long been believed, they say, that Twitter interfered in the 2020 general presidential election in the United States by suppressing and censoring the New York Post's bombshell report on revelations of shady international business dealings and influence peddling gleaned from Hunter Biden's laptop.
Again, that's the same. I can't stand it. It's the same as the Stormy Daniels affair.
Right.
That's the same. We had the right to know both things. I can't stop.
Don't stop.
I don't have a voice to be screaming like this, but
it'll break you. It'll break through. Musk vowed to make public the internal conversations had at Twitter in 2020 regarding that censorship, which polling later showed did have an effect on the election, as voters said they may not have voted for Joe Biden had they known about the reports of influence peddling in the Biden family. This reporting has been verified by established media in recent weeks. Yes, the New York Times, CBS came out and also verified it. At the time, former FBI agents claimed that the reports were intentional misinformation. And later, former Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey had apologized in front of Congress for the suppression of the accurate, verified reports. There's also been concerns that the big tech platforms interfered with elections in African countries by suppressing and censoring information there. Bloomberg reported in 2020 that social media platforms were cracking down on election-related content in Guinea due to concerns that the existing government was using these platforms to spread misinformation. So the White House has been pushing the idea that under Elon Musk, things are, it's troubling, right? That Twitter is now becoming a place of hate speech and violent rhetoric. The mainstream media won't like this statistic, which came out over the past few days. The amount of hate speech on Twitter has actually dropped dramatically under Elon Musk. Oh, interesting. And the same time, Twitter has added 1.2 million or 2.2 million new accounts. And earlier this afternoon, Elon Musk announced that they were expelling or getting rid of a lot of bot accounts. So you might notice your follower counts dropping. because they were just going through and eliminating bot accounts, bot accounts. I don't know what a better way to say it. Fake
you don't
accounts.
need to.
Fake bot accounts, yeah. But that's not stopping the White House at all from spreading lies about Twitter and Elon Musk and threatening investigations over this platform. So yesterday, reporter Peter Doocy asked the White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, so when will the White House delete its Twitter account? Watch.
On another subject, when are you guys going to delete the White House Twitter account?
Why would we do that?
Well, you're saying that you're keeping an eye on Twitter because it might not be a suitable platform, so why use it?
Look, I want to be very clear here. The president has always said, and he has been very clear in his belief that it is important of social media platforms to continue to take steps to reduce hate speech and misinformation. And will continue to say that. But media platforms make independent choices about their information that they present. And so, look, I don't have anything to share on any policy or any changes that we will be making. We have multiple platforms, as you know, that we utilize to communicate with the American people.
No, they don't make independent choices about what to censor. Mark Zuckerberg admitted that the FBI called him. That's not independent.
Right.
They could have made an independent choice. They did not. They had a conference call. Actually, no, they had an in-person.
They went and showed up.
Yeah, they had an in-person meeting about content. So that's a lie.
Yeah.
Well, it can't be a lie because she said I want to be very clear here.
Oh,
which I kind of want to make. I kind of want to make like a game out of that. Like there should be something we should do every time she says, "I want to be clear here." I don't know if you could like.
I was thinking earlier today, I need some sort of like a bell. I need something that I can ring or something.
Or like a swear jar.
Yeah,
we'll put it
something
like a
pops
quarter
up.
in the.
Let me be clear. We've always been clear. The president has been clear. Let's be clear. We've always been clear. She says it every 5 sentences.
And when President Biden took office, Twitter gave him the @POTUS handle, and they fought to get Trump's followers automatically transferred into the new Joe Biden POTUS account, and Twitter wouldn't let him do that. And according to most reports, he was pissed about it because he wanted to automatically inherit all of those followers that Trump had built up over all those years because he was so prolific on the platform. And Twitter wouldn't let him have his way. So there's absolutely no way they would give up this @POTUS handle and just let it go.
Right.
I'd take it. I don't know what I'd do with it. I don't tweet a lot. You know what I do on Twitter is I read things that get me fired up and I scream about it, and then I type something and then I delete it.
And then you don't actually publish it.
Yeah.
So these clowns in Washington can't explain why they're going after Elon Musk. Like, they really can't. And so Martha MacCallum did a fantastic job. And this interview is about 5 minutes, so I'm going to interrupt it a little bit here. I cut off a little bit. But she talks with John Kirby from the White House, and she lays into him about this hypocrisy about Twitter and Elon Musk and Apple blocking the ability for protesters in China to access the airdrop feature. Why go after Elon Musk and not go after Apple? We did a whole segment on that last night. You should see it. Pretty amazing. So here is Martha MacCallum going after John Kirby. Watch this gem.
You know, this is an interesting situation that has developed with Apple. And I want to start there and get your take on what Apple is doing, because they have restricted, which is what the Chinese government wants, some use of airdrop ability from iPhone to iPhone, because they're cutting the service down. And this is the way the protesters are communicating with each other. What does the White House, what do you say to Apple about helping the Chinese government to keep their people under control?
Well, look, in general, and we've been clear about this all around the world, we want individual citizens, no matter what government they live under, to be able to communicate freely and openly, transparently and reliably. And we've made that clear with respect to Iran, and we certainly continue to make that clear here with respect to China.
You made that clear to Apple?
Apple's a private company, Martha. They have to make decisions, and they have to speak for those decisions. But here at the White House, here in the administration, we want to see that individual citizens, whether they're protesting or not, but in this case, I know that's the context we're talking about, are able to communicate freely and openly.
First of all, Apple is not.
Why not say something to Apple? Because we were just.
Apple's not a private company. Apple's a public company. Twitter, by the way, is a private company. Elon Musk bought the company and took it from being public to private. Just a little, we want to put that little fact in there for you, John Kirby.
Told the other day that the White House is keeping an eye on Elon Musk and Twitter. So why would you say that from the podium? You didn't say it, but Karine Jean-Pierre said it, and not call Apple out for helping the Chinese government to suppress their own people's ability to communicate?
Again, I think we've been very clear and consistent on this. Certainly publicly, we've been very open about our desires to be able to see citizens communicate. And you know, Apple, if this is a decision that they're making, then they should have to speak to that. But we can't, and we aren't in the business of telling private companies how to execute their initiatives.
Yeah, but Twitter's a private company too. So why is Twitter getting one treatment and Apple's getting another? Is my question.
Well, these are completely two different circumstances. You're talking about the potential. Well, you're talking about the potential for perhaps foreign investment and involvement in the management of Twitter. That's a different issue than what we're talking about here, which is a business decision by Apple with respect to how one of their applications is being utilized.
Certainly, they're getting influenced by a foreign government, and that government is China. And Apple's policies, they've changed policies specifically for China when it comes to what they put on their phones.
Right.
I mean, that seems like something that the White House ought to be able to keep an eye on.
I certainly think that's a fair question to ask Apple and try to make them communicate why they did this.
But I'm asking, has the White House done that? Have you reached out to them as a matter of national security, since we obviously have national security concerns with China, who they seem to be aiding in this process?
Sure. I don't have any communications to speak to specifically with Apple executives. Again, it's a private company. They make these policies. And
again, it's a public company. Sorry.
They should have to answer for that. What we want to see is that citizens are reliably able to communicate, whether it's a time of crisis or not.
Yeah, but I go back to this same thing, because we were just told that the White House will keep an eye on Twitter because they're concerned about the new Twitter 2.0 that Elon Musk is putting in, where he wants more free speech on Twitter. So they're going to keep an eye on Twitter, and yet you're taking a hands-off approach. You say there's been no communication with Tim Cook at Apple about this process in China with the Chinese government?
Martha, I'm not aware that there's been any conversations specifically with Apple on this particular issue. It's a private company. And as for
it's a public company.
Twitter, again, Martha, these are apples and oranges. We're talking about potential foreign investment issues, and I have nothing to report in terms of any investigations in that regard. But that was the general concern with respect to Mr. Musk's purchase of Twitter. This is a different issue. This is a policy issue inside of Apple.
They both involve foreign governments, I would argue. So, you know, we can circle back around on that. I want to ask you one more question here, and we're going to get to this a little bit later as well. Elon Musk has just come out and said, and by the way, I just want to point out that Elon Musk helped protesters in Iran and in Ukraine by getting Starlink up and working. So he did the absolute opposite of what Tim Cook at Apple is doing right now. But I want to get your attention to this. He says the obvious reality, as longtime users know, is that Twitter has failed in trust and safety for a very long time and has interfered in elections. Twitter 2.0 will be far more effective, transparent, and even-handed. He's been talking about opening up the communications that existed between entities, perhaps even the U.S. government, perhaps even the White House, and Twitter about suppressing the Hunter Biden story. Are you concerned at all? Are you aware of any communications between the government and Twitter to say, put a handle on this story, and it was suppressed? We know that Facebook said that there was interaction between some government officials and them about being very cautious about this Hunter Biden story right before the election.
I'm certainly not aware of any conversations or dialogue in that respect, Martha, no.
So, you know, what do you say about the fact that he says that there was interference in the election? Because I know that the president has been very passionate about threats to democracy and freedom in our elections. So if he's saying there's a concern that Twitter has interfered in elections, I would assume that would be a concern of yours and the White House's as well.
Well, certainly we want to make sure that our elections are free and fair and open and transparent, and any threat to that obviously is a concern of ours. I'm not aware of exactly what Mr. Musk is speaking about here. I look forward to getting more information about that so we can better understand what he's alleging here. But obviously we want our elections to be free and fair and open, and we know that social media in general was capitalized on from the Russians in particular in 2016, and they tried it in 2018, and they attempted to do it again again in 2020, and they claimed that they were working to try to interfere with our election that we just had, the midterm. So we're always watchful for foreign interference, and certainly social media is a venue through which bad actors can try to do that. But I'm just not familiar enough with what Mr. Musk is talking about here.
I just don't know. I just don't know what he's talking about.
And you want me to be interested in that? Yes, I am. Yes.
I'm interested.
You're right.
I'm interested because, it's only the Russians. It's always Putin. But I'm sorry, didn't the FBI literally go to meet with Mark Zuckerberg and tell them not to look out for a story from the New York Post about Hunter Biden's laptop? And that was that the Russians? Or was that our own American intelligence community that went and interfered in the election?
Maybe it was FBI agents with Russian ancestry.
Right.
They had Russian blood.
They went on Ancestry.com like,
that person has Russian in their blood. Like 0.5%. It counts.
Oh, Aunt Olga, she was from Moscow. Unbelievable. So we'll see more about this. I mean, we're waiting on these Twitter files. We're going to wait to see what this actual interference looks like, but it's going to be juicy, and we are just sort of sitting by, waiting to see this.
I hate waiting.
I know. Well, in the meantime, you could wait. You could watch Alex Jones' 3-hour interview with Ye and Nick Fuentes today. That was apparently 3 hours. And did someone say 65 million people watched it? I don't know if that's
really.
Right. I saw someone say 65 million. That sounds unbelievable.
I missed that one because I've been watching the Royals kind of walk around Boston.
Yeah.
That's.
I mean, the baseball team?
No.
The Royals. Kansas City
Prince and Princess of Wales.
No, but think about this.
To see what she's wearing.
So they get on their show, they get about 100,000 views, and because they've been banned and censored everywhere, right? So 65 million tuned in. I would love to see that number. That's crazy. That's amazing if it is. I would love to see that. For 3 hours, apparently they let him speak. So we'll see. We've got more news to get to here. We're going to talk about what the New York Times says about Haiti, because an invasion of Haiti by the United States is seemingly imminent, but we've been waiting for this. The United States is pushing for it. Now the New York Times is reporting that the United States is ready to go, ready for this invasion. So we'll bring you that story. We're also going to talk about the Great Barrier Reef.
Yes, because the United Nations now says that it needs to be classified as in danger. We're going to look at what fantasy data they use to decide that. I'm going to give you a little clue. It's mostly based on just symmetry, not really math.
And also, we've got a few stories that we're going to take to Rumble exclusively. So we're going to, in a few minutes, we got a couple other stories first. We're going to say goodbye to you here on YouTube because we will be censored, blocked, banned, kicked off once again. We will say bye to our YouTube stream and come on over to Rumble, where we have about 15,000 people watching on Rumble right now. So just go to rumble.com/redacted to open up your Rumble account, and we will continue the stream unfettered, uncensored on Rumble in just a few minutes.
Yes, it's exciting to see this number go up. And I see a lot of you say, okay, I switched over. I'm here. I see sort of similar usernames from one to the next, and we're watching what you have to say. And I appreciate it very much.
Yeah, I do too.
Speaking of that, I was really touched by a super chat. We just had someone just put $2 and said, "Welcome back, Natalie. Sorry, I'm poor." And that one really got me. Aww. Because you spent $2 just to tell me welcome back from a sick day. And I appreciate that. I'm a bit choked up about a lot of things, that included.
That's very, very sweet.
Yeah.
So, very, very sweet of you.
Thank you so much.
So we're going to get to more news here in a moment. You're here because you want to hear the news, and we want to bring you a great show and cover the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. And so that's the whole point of us doing this show. And, we really thank all of you for being a part of it and subscribing. Oh, there's one thing you can do right now, because we've been censored and blocked and banned. If you just smash that like button on YouTube, it helps push us further out into the algorithm. And also, if you smash that Rumble on Rumble, you click the little, I think it's called a Rumble, right? Rumble, I think it's called a Rumble. You smash the plus button on Rumble. Then that really helps us as well on Rumble. So you can do both of those things. And we should point out before we get to more news, yesterday, YouTube was down. We covered this in the newsletter. So a lot of people were experiencing glitches. They were using their phone, their iOS device, and they were launching the YouTube app, and it was crashing on them like crazy. It had all kinds of problems. And YouTube backend was down as well. So YouTube acknowledged it, said, yeah, we had all kinds of problems, outages. People were reporting all sorts of problems on the smartphone and everything. So thankfully, it wasn't us.
You should have seen Clayton's face. Every morning he sits down with his coffee and he looks through comments and he looks like, which videos were you all interested in more than others? He likes to dive into that data with his coffee. And he was like, what's going on here? And, you know, and so when he saw later in the day that it was a YouTube issue, it was really relieving.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway.
Well, we're back. We're here.
All right. We got more news to get to. So first I want to tell you about our friends over at Nugenix, because, you know, if you're getting older, you're getting a little bit of a dad bod. You're getting, you're feeling a little less like your old self. We've all been there, right? You know, David and I right now working on the carnivore diet. As well. Maybe you don't have time to work out. You're looking for ways to give yourself an edge, get that energy you had before when you were younger, that body that you once had. Well, you know, Nugenix is the way to go to try this. It's amazing to try this, working out like you used to. So if you feel like you just can't get in shape, it's not your fault. As men age, bodies naturally lose free testosterone, the man hormone. It happens to every man, and it can make it more difficult to stay in shape. So Nugenix has their Total T, which is a man-boosting key ingredient, just like what they use from their it's Testofen. So if you want more energy to counter the negative effects of aging, Nugenix Total T Testosterone Booster with Testofen will help you turn back the clock, re-energize your workouts, get you better results at the gym, and help you look and feel like the man you really want to be. Because Nugenix Total T boosts free testosterone in the body that the aging process robs you of. You're going to feel stronger, leaner, with more energy and drive and more passion too. Your partner will notice the difference as well. Nugenix Total T is the #1 selling testosterone booster at GNC, so you can pick it up there. They can also help re-energize your life, help you get back feeling more powerful, confident, like that warrior that you once were. So right now, you can get a complimentary bottle, totally free, Nugenix Total T, when you text the word redacted to 231-231. So if you just text now, grab your phone, text the word redacted to get a bottle of Nugenix Thermo, their most powerful fat incinerator ever, with key ingredients to help you get back into shape fast. Absolutely free. Text the word redacted to 231-231. Again, text the word redacted to 231-231. Texting enrolls you into recurring automated text messages. Consent not required to purchase. Message and data rates may apply. So text the word redacted to 231-231. Well, now to a story that we've been covering extensively here on Redacted, the story of the coming invasion of Haiti by the United States and a willing coalition of allies. Now, up until recently, the mainstream media has been largely ignoring this story, and then something changed. Maybe it was the midterm elections. I don't know. Where they're now keen to want to cover this story. It's hard to tell. But the New York Times out with a big story just a short few days ago about the impending invasion of Haiti by the United States government. So for more on that story, we wanted to bring in journalist from Uncaptured Media, Dan Cohen, who just returned from Port-au-Prince, Haiti, who did an amazing job filing reports for Redacted down there. Dan, welcome back. It's good to have you back here in the studio.
Great to be back. Thanks, Clayton.
So amazing job down there. Now, what you were seeing on the ground was contradicting a lot of the reports that we were hearing from the mainstream media. So were you surprised, first of all, seeing this New York Times piece come out? A pretty big story, a pretty big deep dive into what's going on in Haiti and about this U.S. invasion or wanting an invasion of Haiti.
Well, firstly, I think it's remarkable to see the New York Times now saying that this U.S. invasion of Haiti is imminent, because that's what I reported back in September, and that largely fell on deaf ears, especially in the mainstream media. It was totally ignored that I had from the former U.S. envoy to Haiti, Dan Foote, saying we're either going to send a hit squad or we're going to send a full-on U.S. invasion. And that was ignored until now, post midterms. So it suggests that there are political motivations. But nonetheless, now it seems it's time for narrative control to basically tell the public why the U.S. has to intervene in Haiti and put it in nice flowery terms that it's some kind of humanitarian mission. But obviously, I think probably most of Redacted's viewers are not gullible to believe that. So I think it's really important to parse out. And I just saw so many deceptions, so many lies, when I was down there with my own eyes. The media is saying one thing and I'm seeing another.
Specifically, you can talk about, I want to talk about that humanitarian crisis that you call out as total BS here in a second. But just give us an example. Give us like 3 examples of lies that the Western media was telling about Haiti and what you were seeing on the ground.
Well, for one thing, they were saying, oh, there's no gas, there's no fuel whatsoever because of this barricade by this armed group and this monster named Barbecue. And as it turns out, there are 3 fuel terminals in Port-au-Prince alone. And I, myself and my producer, Kim Ives, we were flying my drone all around Port-au-Prince, and we captured footage of these oil tankers coming from other countries, unloading fuel without any problem. And so, clearly there is fuel coming into the country. There is also fuel coming in from the Dominican Republic, despite protests against it in the border regions. So that was one lie. There was a fuel shortage, but it was not what they said it was. And the blame was not what they said it was. Second, there was these claims that this fuel shortage is causing the hospital to cease operations. We went to the hospital, interviewed the general director, and she said, well, yes, we have shortages, but these have been ongoing for months and months, long before the blockade and long before even the cuts to fuel subsidies that the puppet interim prime minister imposed. So suddenly that becomes a narrative, but those have been there all along. One of the biggest deceptions that I saw was the claim of a cholera outbreak, which of course there was cholera in Haiti, but this was blamed by the US government and the corporate media on the FRG-9's barricade on that fuel terminal. So they blockade the terminal and suddenly everyone gets cholera. I don't know how that's supposed to make sense, but in mainstream media world, apparently you just go along with it. But the reality is cholera has been there all along. I spoke to people on the ground. I spoke to missionary health professionals who have been going there every year, and they see cholera every time they treat people for cholera. And it's not because of a barricade on a fuel terminal. It's because people particularly in the neighborhood of Cité Soleil, which is the most exploited, impoverished slum in the Western Hemisphere, lives in a literal lake of sewage, worse conditions than I've ever seen in anywhere I've ever been, reporting in the world. People live in a lake of sewage that comes down from the hills of Port-au-Prince, and the government chooses to not dredge the canals that are supposed to flow into the Caribbean Sea. And so because people live in sewage, you get all kinds of pathogens. You get dysentery, you get malaria, and you get, of course, cholera. So that's always there. And the pretext then is always there. So a total canard, once again, from the mainstream media. There are so many deceptions. Also, the idea that Barbecue and the G9, the FRG9, were selling gas. They're taking it and selling gas to, on the black market and making huge amounts of money. They didn't have the technical expertise to even go into the gas terminal and get it. It's not like you go to the pump and just turn it on. You have to have engineers, et cetera, to be able to operate this fuel terminal to take it. So the technical side was infeasible for them, let alone for them, it was about principle. It wasn't about making money. But that's the whole game, is to smear them as just gangsters rather than people with principles.
Oh, you mean just like how the United States goes into other countries like Syria and goes to their fuel terminals and oil depots and actually has the technical expertise to steal their oil, which is, of course, what they're doing in a lot of these occupied countries. So I love that we call that out. Now, one of the things, of course, in this New York Times piece is the humanitarian angle. And it says, I'm just going to quote from the New York Times. It says, now fearing that the humanitarian crisis engulfing Haiti could spur mass migration to the United States and elsewhere, some top Biden administration officials are pushing to send a multinational armed force to the country. Several current current and former officials say after the Haitian government made an appeal for such an intervention last month. By the way, I don't know if you've been paying attention to the Biden administration. Doesn't seem like they give a rat's behind about mass migration coming across the United States border, but they're suddenly worried about Haitian migration. This sounds like it doesn't even pass the smell test.
Well, they've actually been deporting huge amounts of Haitians. You know, there are ICE flights on a near daily basis. I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but huge amounts of Haitians who have left their country, you know, gone through Latin America, all through Central America, into Mexico. They get to the border and then, you know, either they come in or many of them get deported on expensive charter flights. So on one hand, the Biden administration is saying, well, you know, the situation is so horrible there. And in many ways it is. But at the same time, they're going to deport people there. So, and then say, oh, we have to carry out this humanitarian intervention.
Right. It doesn't really add up. Also, so the troop angle of this. So the United States, according to the New York Times, doesn't want its own troops included in this force. But according to the numbers, they're saying, you know, they could send 2,500 United States members of the military there. So it sounds like the United States, according to the New York Times, you know, is actively pushing to send an armed force, but it doesn't want to be the country that does it. So they've been calling on Brazil and Canada, but they seem hesitant, according to the New York Times. Can you unpack that part for us?
Right. So even despite the barricade being overthrown, the barricade on that fuel terminal that Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier and the FRG9 had for 5.5 weeks, that was overthrown because the U.S. and Canada sent in armored vehicles. They delivered those to the Haitian police, and that gave them the firepower to be able to take out the barricade, to overcome it. The U.S. still says, oh, well, we still want the intervention, even though the pretext is gone. So now it's pretty obvious that it wasn't about the barricade. So now the U.S. has gone to the UN, attempted to get consensus around a military invasion into Haiti, but that basically failed because of Russia and China, who said, no, we're willing to go along with sanctions, international sanctions, but we're not going to approve a military invasion, particularly when you look at the history of what the UN so-called peacekeepers have done in Haiti in previous decades, with the U.S. leading the way. So now the U.S. is like, well, we got to find somewhere else. So they are kind of, I think, probing to figure out who they can get to go along with this invasion of Haiti. They had tried Canada. Canada seems to be a bit hesitant. And I think it's largely because they know, the Canadians, just like the U.S., know that if there's basically an invasion that doesn't have the patina of international consensus, then it's going to spark a mass uprising in Haiti and rally the population around whoever's resisting it. And the person who's going to be resisting it, the group who is going to be resisting it, is exactly Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier and the FRG9. And if you watch the special report that we filed, I asked him about that. You know, what do you think about a possible U.S. invasion? And he's like, well, they're going to do what they're going to do. We'll be ready, is essentially his message. I'm not going to react one way or the other. So, you know, very kind of cool and collected response. But the U.S. is just looking for any way, any avenue to be able to get some kind of image of popular kind of, you know, united global support for this so-called intervention in Haiti.
Well, it's why it's so important that we, you know, are able to cover this story, and your reporting has been so important. So, because most Americans, most of the world, get these New York Times reports or an Associated Press report, and they think that that's gospel, or they think that that's the truth, when in fact you're there, boots on the ground, covering this story, and can debunk a lot of this garbage from the mainstream media, the corporate media. So very, very important. This is the power of, you know, independent journalism. So, Dan, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I want to encourage all of our viewers to go and check out the special report. We'll have it linked up in the video below. It's about a 30-minute special report documentary on Dan's trip there just last week, coming back from Port-au-Prince, Haiti. I encourage all of you to watch it. Dan, thanks so much. Great to see you.
Thank you, Clayton. Appreciate it.
And we'll also have linked up in the description below too. Just Dan also put together a 3-part documentary with his team on Haiti as well. So very important information to be educated about what's going on in the world, and the U.S. sticking their nose in. It's amazing to see, the New York Times, the Associated Press, really the only people that were covering this, and they're covering it wrong, of course. And so, it's amazing. This is all we have, like this corporate media garbage that exists.
But it's like a repeat of the story, like the story that was told in Ethiopia, is that there's no aid, these people have nothing, so we have to. Right. So anytime we see this now, we're like, how do they know that?
No, we should all question this stuff. Hey, for the holidays, we have a new store. We've got a lot of new goodies up there right now. You can get your Redacted merch right now. If you go to redactedstore.com, we just got our new mugs in, new hats. We're really excited about it. Some of the hats will take a little bit longer, so you might want to get those orders in. If you order a hoodie or a different piece of clothing, the hats are coming from a different one of our different suppliers. So just be aware that we have to get the embroidery done, and it takes a little bit longer. So get your orders in now if you go to redactedstore.com. And we opened it up for international orders too, I believe, right? Because we heard from some people in Ireland, and there was somebody in Germany. Somebody wrote us from Germany, was trying to complete an order. So we now, it should be open, right? I think that was what Grim, I think that he messaged earlier right before the show.
He said he was looking into it.
Okay. Good.
Okay. All right.
I think Grim said he did open it up to international.
Sweet. All right. So now we've got international orders are available, which is awesome. Redactedstore.com. Yeah, there was a flurry of text messages happening right before the show.
I see it now. Okay.
Yes. Thank you, Grim. Awesome. And Grim is our designer. So all of those great designs are thanks to his handiwork. So thank you.
And this stuff?
Yeah, he did all of this, and I asked.
So cute, right?
Look, there's Santa. Grim built all of this for the holidays too. So he's a fantastic graphic designer as well. So thank you, Grim. And notice all the street lights, and we've got down here in Porto over our beautiful scene here in Porto, Portugal. So
how many of you have been with us for over a year? Last year on Christmas Eve, our children did a Santa report. They sat right here in these seats and reported to you where Santa was at any given moment and how to get ready. It was the
Santa Tracker update.
It was Santa Tracker update. Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to be doing it this year. We'll have to ask their agents.
We'll see if they're available.
Yeah.
To do a Santa Tracker. All right.
Okay. Let's see how I'm going to. I have a story to tell you. I'm going to drink
But she's getting over a sickness. She's had double ear infection, sore throat. So get your water bottle out.
All right.
Ready?
I make no promises for this going smoothly, but here we go. Is the Great Barrier Reef doomed? In August, we presented research to you from the Australian Institute of Marine Science, or AIMS, showing that it is not. Actually, the Great Barrier Reef is thriving. So why this headline this week? This is from the Huffington Post. Great Barrier Reef should be listed as in danger, UN mission reports. If you're surprised by this, you haven't been paying attention, said a coral reef scientist. Okay. Here's CNN. Great Barrier Reef should be placed on the endangered list. UN-backed report shows. Okay, so the United Nations is telling you that the Great Barrier Reef should be classified as endangered based on their new report. So guess what I did is I decided to read said report. Here are two things I decreasingly like to see together: United Nations and report, because
usually filled with bullshit.
That's usually just full of nonsense. So here's the report. Notice it's based on some dates. I circled the dates for you. The 21st through the 30th of March, 2022. So what do you think they would do? What would you do, Clayton, if I said, you're going to give me a report based on 10 days in Australia studying the Great Barrier Reef? Clayton's a good person to ask because he actually has a scuba diving certificate.
Yes,
So what would you do?
For 9 days at the Great Barrier Reef, I would probably spend the first 2 days having some delicious Australian beer, perhaps. And then I would go out to the reef, and then I would scuba dive.
Okay.
And then I would spend like a few days scuba diving with my dive masters, and we would go through all of the different spots, and I would dive. I'd probably do about 6 or 7, maybe 8 dives. And then I'd go maybe back and have a beer.
Okay.
And then I'd come back home.
All right. Well, maybe based on the enthusiasm that you just gave that plan, I would probably give you a C on that report because there's too much fooling around. But at least you mentioned going there.
But if you know anything about scuba diving, you cannot scuba dive and fly within the same 24-hour period. So,
but you gave yourself 2 days for beer drinking.
Well, I have to decompress. I might be a little jet lagged.
Okay. Well, at least you planned to get on a wetsuit and go see the reef. The United Nations did not do that. Here is what they did while they were there. They give us these key missions of what they did in order to do this report. Let's see. They reviewed the status of a plan. They assessed the state's progress on that plan twice, and they assessed other relevant issues.
Wait a minute.
And then they traveled through the Great Barrier region and met with stakeholders to address the mission and the plan.
What the hell?
So it says, based on these things, what they did, none of this involves scuba diving or boats.
What a bunch of idiots.
Don't you need a boat?
Well, no, see, that's what I would have done. See, when Clayton gave his explanation of what he would do, if I was given the task of writing this report, I would go to the hotel, hang out there, have the beers for probably 3 or 4 days. And then I would ask people in the hotel if they knew anything about the Great Barrier Reef. I would Google it a little bit, and then I would write this awesome report and send it to you.
Cool.
With a clear plastic binder.
Yours might even be more accurate than the United Nations. This sounds very similar to what they did in China.
That report, which we went over extensively, had Google image.
They're like, we didn't go there. We just got some Google images. That's our UN report.
They did go to China. They didn't go to any of the sites that they reported on, but they provided us with Google image,
This is why we can't trust these globalists.
Images.
I mean, we cannot trust these globalists. These are the same assholes, by the way, who a few weeks ago at that climate summit told us that they were, and the misinformation, whatever climate rigmarole, where the United Nations people got together and told us that they were censoring search results on Google.
Yes. Okay.
About climate.
But maybe not their own Google research because they rely on it so heavily. Now, based on this plan of going through a plan and talking about people about the plan, the team concluded that despite the unparalleled science and management efforts made by the state party in recent years, they're talking about the Australian government, that the OUV of the property is significantly impacted by climate change factors. And so, these are some of the things. So that based on all of this, having meetings, not in bathing suits, not in wetsuits, that's what they concluded. Take a look at their kind of official conclusion. Considering the above, the mission team concludes that the property is faced with major threats that could have deleterious effects on its inherent characteristics and therefore meets the criteria for inscription on the list of World Heritage in danger as set out in paragraph 180B of these guidelines. Therefore, the mission recommends that the Great Barrier Reef be inscribed on the list of World Heritage in danger.
So there's no evidence of that yet. We're just going to put that on that list. Why don't you just instead
based on
of
all
doing
their
that,
meetings, okay,
but why don't you just say, hey, it's it's like a UNESCO World Heritage site, so we shouldn't mess with it. We should just protect it in the same way that we protect Yellowstone.
It already is largely protected in that way, but why this power grab? We're going to talk about that in a second. So basically, they're putting the reef on the naughty list for not keeping to the plan. The U.S. says that more promises to reduce carbon emission, or the UN says this, I'm sorry. They say they want more promises out of Australia to reduce carbon emissions. They're not happy with what has been done so far. Australia pushed back on this. In fact, the environment minister said, yes, we know we haven't made great progress, but that was the old government. They didn't do enough for the plan. This government's doing a lot. Don't punish us. Don't call the Great Barrier Reef in danger. We're sticking to the plan now. We know the plan. But the reef itself, who went to measure the reef? Anyone who researched this plan actually going to measure the reef and give us, some information? Anyone?
No, we're not.
Bueller.
Okay. So then let's look at some research from people who have actually gone to the reef, which is AIMS, the institute I just told you about, the Australian Institute of Marine Science. They published research this year showing that the coral reef is at a 36-year high. Let me say that more clearly. The Great Barrier Reef is at a 36-year high, meaning it is more robust than ever. And how do they know that? They didn't actually have meetings with the UN to figure that out. They actually towed a diver all along the reefs in Australia. Take a look at what they did. They had a boat and they had a diver just hanging out by the boat and measuring. Like, they actually measured. They've been doing this now for 30 years, which means that AIMS has now towed divers a distance roughly equivalent to the circumference of the world. That is a remarkable expedition of actually doing science.
Wow. Maybe they could have gone on that boat.
Yeah.
They could have met with some of the manta people. Like, hey, you guys, we know that
UN people, do you want to come? No,
Yeah.
we're busy. We're doing summitry.
We're 45 minutes away in a conference room at a Marriott. That's who we talked to.
Now, let's take a look at what they found when AIMS did this. So there are a couple of major things that are measured when you're measuring the Great Barrier Reef. It's the size of the reef, it's the bleaching of the reef, and it's the population of crown of thorns starfish, which are what's the word I'm trying to say? They're natural predators that
invasive species.
They're an invasive species there. So if you look, if any of those measures was down or in danger, you would see these colors of red and orange on the chart. But in fact, in the 2022 data, almost all metrics are up in the green. So why then would the United Nations say this? Physicist Peter Ridd has studied the Great Barrier Reef since 1984. He took this AIMS data this year and made this chart again, showing that coral cover is almost at an almost all-time high. Take a look. Ridd points out that the reefs are supposed to ebb and flow. Actually, they're not supposed to just keep going up and up and up. And that they are extremely resilient. He also points out that human behavior really doesn't affect the reef as much as the media tells us to. Reef destruction happens due to weather events and outbreaks of this starfish, which are native to the region. So we can't even blame humans for that, even though we really want to. Here is what he said about the 2022 AIMS data. He says, the data since 1986 shows that the region, every sector of most reefs, have had occasionally periods of low coral cover for one reason or another. This is entirely natural. The media makes much of the occasional setbacks to coral cover, but a measure of the health of the ecosystem is the ability to recover from a major stress. Frail systems will not recover. Robust systems recover well, just as healthy people recover quickly from disease. The Great Barrier Reef has proven to be a vibrant and healthy ecosystem. This should not be a surprise. There are few human pressures on the reef, and it is well protected. It is unreasonable to expect that the small temperature rise over the last century of 1 degree Celsius will have caused much impact, especially as it is well known that most corals grow faster in warmer water. The data collected by AIMS shows that the Great Barrier Reef is a robust system with rapid fluctuating coral cover. We must expect that sometime in the future, a sequence of events will cause the coral cover to fall sharply, as it did in 2011. We must remember that this is almost certainly natural and not allow the merchants of doom to depress children. Okay, so why then, based on this actual data, when we juxtapose it with the UN report, which is based on basically meetings of people and discussions, why? We went over this on September 1st, a UN report about China's treatment about the Uyghurs. It was a similar report. When the United Nations publishes their report, they didn't visit the places they said that were camps or mosques, destroyed mosques. They just this report seems to have followed that report's playbook. It does not even include data at all from AIMS, the Australian Institute of Marine Scientists. So why? Why would it, though, when you can just have meetings
Right. Just go to the Marriott.
So then, yes, this sort of hanging question of why would the United Nations do this? Why would the media fall in line and say, oh, yes, it's in danger. Great Barrier Reef, absolutely in danger. We will repeat this from the United Nations. When the media could have read these reports from Ames too. Why? Climate researcher Michael Schellenberger has this guess. There's more coral reef, he says, on the Great Barrier Reef than at any point in the last 36 years. We just showed you that data. And yet United Nations bureaucrats still want to take control of it because they're power-mad lunatics. That is really the only explanation that makes sense here when you look at the data.
Well, when you look at, wanting to censor Google search results, have power, make sure that you're in cahoots with Google and you're telling them what people can find out, what people can eat for dinner, what farms can be closed in the Netherlands, what you can grow in your backyard, what sorts of food, meat you're allowed to eat, or what sorts of food you're allowed to have, what sorts of biometrics you need to register yourself for, all of it. No currency anymore. We're going to have digital currency. It's all about control. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's about money and control.
I just wonder if once they put it on this naughty list of in danger, then what? They can put stricter emissions targets on Australia.
Oh,
they
sure.
can, all kinds of things that will give them power. That's why you see the Australian government pushing back and saying, no, we are curbing carbon.
Yeah.
Knock it off. But nobody actually said, except Michael Schellenberger and us, we just read data showing the Barrier Reef is good. Why are you What's
doing
this about?
Jay Thomas in our chat says, I live in Missouri. She sent a super chat. I live in Missouri, which used to be under the sea with the ancient fossils to prove it. So we survived immense earth changes before. Globalists are Malthusian Gaia worshippers that want us dead. Yes, that's right. It's a good way to do it.
Yeah, to put a fine coin on it.
Ban PSYOPs.
Well, I had that,
interesting says. Yeah, that's another thing we could do. Ban PSYOPs. Go ahead, Philip.
In the early 2000s, I was because I went to college twice, but I was an environmental chemistry major, and so I had to take a class called environmental ethics. And just the amount of backlash I got in that class, because this was just after the environmental movement of the 90s, and because I was very anthropocentric in how to handle the environment, people would say, we got to save the earth, and I was like, well, let's just keep it habitable for humans. And people just would freak out about that. There was a hot take that that it wasn't just trying to preserve the earth itself, because my philosophy was the earth will keep spinning whether we're on it or not.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And, when you think of the sort of natural type of habitat that we covet, that we think we need to save, for instance, Michael Schellenberger talks about this in his book. We think of maybe cleared out fields with a forest in a mountain, right? And that is largely human created. Humans raised those fields in order to get animals to come into open streams and hunt them. We have been in a conversation with the earth for a really long time, and the earth does actually respond to us. There's a great book called Braiding Sweetgrass, which I really liked. It talked about certain species that need human interaction. So framing humans as again, the Barrier Reef doesn't really respond that much to humans. It's sort of protected. So anyhow, this is interesting data, I thought.
It is. We will continue to follow that. All right, it's time, everyone. So it is time right now. We are going to say goodbye to YouTube. We are going to move over to Rumble. So all of you who are still watching on YouTube, goodbye. Or please come over to Rumble. It's rumble.com/redacted. Again, these are the stories we're about to bring you that we cannot absolutely talk about on YouTube. They will ban us, block us, censor us once again. So we've got two big stories that we're going to cover here that are very, very important that we cannot cover on YouTube. So please move on over to Rumble right now. Just go over to rumble.com/redacted. And I see we now have more people watching us on Rumble than we do on YouTube, which is unbelievable to us because it's a free speech, free censorship platform that does not hinder your ability to tell the truth about what's going on in the world. So I've got my Rumble board right in front of me. So come on over here to Rumble if you dare. Come on over. It's easy to do. It's easy to sign up on your smartphone. It's free. It's just like, YouTube, except no censorship. So come on over, rumble.com/redacted. Don't be scared. We'll wait for you. Come on over.
We'll leave the light on.
Yeah, we'll leave the light on for you.
Somebody said earlier, I didn't catch the name of the person, but apparently somebody else does this, and they were like, "Don't do what such and such does," and that's just like cut over there and immediately start, so that like by the time everybody gets over there, we're practically done with the content.
You need a minute? Okay.
We'll take you a minute. Go ahead.
I mean,
Come on over.
I have to blow my nose.
She has to sneeze. I'm going to drink a little water, but we've got 2 important stories that we want to get to, very important, that we cannot talk about on YouTube. So gather up here by the fire. We'll wait for you all to come over. We got 15,000 of you watching right now on YouTube, so come on over. Come on over right now.
Click that link.
Yeah, come on over.
Click it.
Click that link.
Just click it.
Come on over. So this is going to be an interesting experience. Bueller.
You got to keep that one handy.
Mean Raccoon says, why is this buggy? Mean Raccoon says, you guys are awesome for doing this, moving over to Rumble like that. Thank you so much. Red Duster says, YouTube is an asshole. Stumble or tumble over to Rumble. Yep. Matt Michigan says, ready from YouTube. Moved over. Good riddance to YouTube. 20,000. Let's go. Look at the viewer numbers climb. Love it. YouTube is an asshole indeed. Genius idea. Who came up with this? David had mentioned it a while ago, and then someone had mentioned that someone else that we like, Viva Fry, does this. But then we were talking to the team from Rumble. We've been communicating with the team from Rumble, and they have been fantastic. So the team, Alex and Claudia and the whole team over at Rumble have been really, really great. They can't stand the censorship that occurs over on YouTube, and so they've been talking to us about bringing Redacted over to Rumble in a more in a bigger way. So that's where we kind of came up with the idea. I think the seed was planted. David sort of mentioned it first a number of months ago, and then we've been trying to get this going here. So,
are we off YouTube? Because there's certain words that I
not yet. Hang on. So
okay.
I'm waiting for confirmation from David, and then I'll let you know when we're.
I won't say that word.
Free and clear.
Okay.
There's a okay.
And then David's
hold all your naughty words.
And then this is a little bit slower than we hope to make it in the future because YouTube's David's internet is down today, so he's out at a remote location right now, and so we'll